Well, good evening again, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight, and we're going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't yet, put your name in the drawings and get your coffee and water over there, and we'll get out of here. Tonight you get I don't know what it is. You have to listen to me all night. So hopefully my voice doesn't annoy you because I'm the only speaker tonight. The next 2 months, though, we've got different speakers, which is great. Always look for extra people. Next month is the long-awaited radios and communications session. We had previously scheduled that back last year because it was the most requested session we had. And for uncontrollable reasons, we had to postpone that. So coming up next month in March, I believe it's the 10th. It's not on my screen, but next month on the second Friday, we'll be talking about radios and communications. And so we look forward to that. Also, and it's not on your list it still says TBA, to be announced, to be determined. I don't know what I have on there. TBA, to be announced. We are announcing now next month, April, will be about canning. And Carol has agreed to bring her setup and teach us about canning, specifically I think water bath, you said, that month. She is also teaching at her church, you said Northside Christian, is that correct? On Highway H on the 18th of this month, which is a week from tomorrow. At what time? 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. She is going to be teaching a free class on water bath canning. That will be followed up the next month in a class on pressure canning. Haven't set the date, but if you show up on the 18th, I'm sure they'll let you know when the next one is. So that's at Northside Christian, not necessarily associated with anything we do here other than she's teaching, and that is something that a lot of people are interested in. So if you're interested in water bath canning, you can check it out there, or you can come to our meeting on the month of April, and we'll talk about that during the month of April. If there's anybody else who is interested, you have an expertise, and you would like to teach something, please let me know. I'm always looking for people who are knowledgeable. I call them SMEs, subject matter experts. And so if you think you know something about something, please let me know. I would love to have you come teach us some things, obviously if it's prepper related. And so look forward to that happening in April. The other thing we want to talk about real quickly is the question here, Friday or Saturday. I'm looking to make a little bit of change up in our schedule. When we first started this group, we met on Saturday mornings. And that worked out well, I thought, at the time. But when we stopped for a little bit during COVID, when we lost our location. And then when we started back up, we started up doing Friday nights, like we're doing now. So just a quick poll, and you really only have two options here, Friday night or Saturday morning, because that's the only times it fit in my schedule. So if you have a preference, we're going to poll here, so get ready to raise an arm, okay? How many of you would prefer Friday evenings? Okay, and how many of you would prefer Saturday mornings? Okay, well, should I make a ruling from the dais? Yeah, I think Friday night's won, so we'll continue to try to shoot for Friday night. Sorry for you Saturday morning folks. I know some of you travel quite a ways or whatever, but we'll continue to try to shoot for Friday nights. So be looking for, we may be changing locations. We'll see. I'm once again experimenting with that and seeing what we got going on. But we'll keep it on Friday nights. So that's pretty definitive there. I think we had about 70% on Friday night and about 30% for Saturday morning. So that was pretty definitive. Good. But actually, I probably shouldn't consider those results good because people who are truly Saturday morning only, they're not here to vote. So, oh well, okay. Okay, well, let's get started tonight. Let me find my clicker, which I do believe is working tonight. Well, I say that, and then it doesn't work. Hold on. There we go. Let's first start talking about this China balloon. Anyone know what we're talking about? Yeah. Unless you've been living in a hole or you never turn on the radio or TV in the last 2 weeks, you should know what we're talking about here. And most of you already heard some talking about it this morning. They shot down a second one within the last 24 hours, coming into Chinese airspace, not Chinese, coming into American airspace over Alaska. They say the one they shot down today is of unknown origin and is considerably smaller, but they did shoot it down over Alaska. So this is just a graphic that I downloaded off the internet. It's not something I made, but it showed the approximate path that the balloon made to the point at which it first made media. Exactly when the United States government knew it showed up, I'm not sure, but it's there. So what is your thoughts on this? I want to hear some discussion. Why did it take them so long to shoot it down? Yeah, they should have shot it down here in the Aleutian Islands. Yeah, I would absolutely concur with that. As soon as it covered over our territorial waters, we should have put the thing down. When we first learned about it in Montana, they were saying, well, we don't want to shoot it down now because we're not for sure where it'll land. And what will happen? I'm like, oh, come on. There's not that much in Montana. You know what I mean? It'd been one thing if it was over New York City or something like that, but Montana? Come on. You know, even one of that's another issue. I think one of the reps for Montana, I don't know if it was the state rep or the U.S. Congressman rep, was talking on the news today saying, absolutely you should have shot it down over my state. You know, what's the worst thing to do? You know, run into the forest. But interesting. Why didn't we shoot it down earlier? That's a great question. I saw another hand.
I believe it's a test of Biden's fortitude.
Or his lack thereof.
I think the test was successful for China. That's just my personal opinion.
I totally agree.
I was wondering what changed that it's okay to shoot it down now over Alaska versus not shooting it down over.
Because it would be pitchforks and torches at the White House.
Yeah. I think whoever makes those decisions may have actually learned a little bit of a lesson over this, because I think pretty much people on both sides of the aisle were appalled that it got as far as it did. Yeah. Oh, a publicity stunt. That's interesting. That's a good question. Yes, sir.
My question is, who's really in charge of our government? Commander-in-Chief wanted to shoot it down over Montana. Joint Chiefs said no, let's wait.
Yeah.
So who's really in charge?
That's not my understanding of the chain of command, is it, for the Army? If the President says do it, it should have been done. But I have a sneaky suspicion, and I don't like talking politics here. This is not what this group is about. But I have a sneaky suspicion that they may have as much disdain for him as some of the people in this room. I don't know. But you think they own it? That's not too far off, I don't think. Yes?
From an intelligence perspective, they might have just wanted to know the track. You know, what are they tracking? Why is it going? And where is it going? You can see it follows the Aleutian Islands perfectly. You know, and we have. I worked for DOD for 40 years, so you know we have stuff way out there, you know, in the Aleutian that comes all the way across the Navy, and then they waited all the way until it got all the way to the Atlantic Navy. You know, I work for an intelligence agency, so I just think that they might have wanted to know where this thing's tracked.
Where's it going? And they probably could have jammed its signal once they figured out it was up there and kept it from transmitting. I don't know, or whatever.
Like I said, I didn't see where it went across the United States, but I mean, there's different stuff in the United States that, maybe they were targeting or something.
I think, you have a question?
I
Well, the track indicated, the one I saw, showed it went over Whiteman and then across the Kent to St. Louis near Scott Air Force Base. And then dumped out on the East Coast where, and they eventually pass over what's known as Sugar Grove, West Virginia, even though it's defunct for the most part as far as the Navy goes. And then out over the coast where you've got the whole Atlantic fleets and the submarines.
And Whiteman is the B2 and all that.
Yeah, very strategic target there.
Definitely.
Yes?
Was it anywhere near the nuclear silos?
Yes, so we have a lot of nuclear silos in this area. And yeah, there's a lot of speculation that that's why it was up here. Well, you know, a lot of people have said, well, what are they going to get from this balloon that they wouldn't get from a satellite anyway? And it came out just recently, I just heard it today, was that it had communications in gathering type of equipment, so they can pick up radio signals and other things that you might not get off of a, yeah, so that maybe that's it. I mean, a lot of speculation. Yes?
I see stuff on Facebook, social media, about people making jokes and stuff about the balloon and everything, but all jokes aside, I think that our government, our elite leaders do not have our best interests in mind. I think that what with all the planes blowing up seriously after years of meeting with Congress, with the farmers being proposition to burn down their crops, with the chicken feed, causing low productivity for our eggs or whatnot, all this stuff going on, I think that is, and as far as with all due respect, I think that's a good theory with watching them watch us, but that's unacceptable, that should not be allowed to cross.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and we'll have 2 more or 3 comments, and then we got to move on.
I think more than anything else, it's diversionary. You're going to use 1700s technology to do spying when they've got their hands in any number of satellites, any number of computers. What? Keep an eye on this.
Something else is going on. Very possible.
I think they're looking for more land about it. They just closer to some of those deep areas.
The land survey.
Not only did that go over our missile silos, went over Hanford and Washington State, nuclear reservation, they processed nuclear material. On the Oak Ridge. From that altitude, you can probably see most of the stuff in California, Arizona, Utah, you name it.
Yeah, we have no real idea what they gathered. Maybe we will once we get it off the bottom of the ocean. What's that?
They're not gonna tell us what they discovered.
No. I mean, they've recovered some of it. Some of it's, I'm understanding, is still at the bottom of the ocean, but they're in the process of recovering it. But last hand, I saw you.
I was going to ask, did anybody find what was actually attached to this balloon? That it's...
Yeah, they're still looking for it. Part of it they recovered. Part of it they're still looking for. Is what I've been led to understand. The last thing I want to say closely mirrors a couple of the different thoughts here. And what popped into my head this week is, if China launched a nuclear missile at us, what would we do? Well, my assumption would be we would shoot it down, or at least attempt to shoot it down. Or shoot back, yeah, absolutely. But if they took that same warhead and they put it on a balloon and they floated it over our country, what are we going to do about it? I think they just found out what we might do about it. In my opinion, this was almost a test to see what they could get away with, what we could find. There's a quote from the general over NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense, I don't know, Cheyenne Mountain, used to be Cheyenne Mountain. I heard they moved it. It's not Cheyenne Mountain anymore. I'm looking at my military guys. Come on, tell me something. But NORAD is the one that watches over our skies. You know, it's supposed to be able to detect if anything around the whole globe is launched our direction. And his basic quote was this morning was, we messed up. They didn't accurately track it, and they didn't accurately know what it was, you know. And so I think this was a great learning opportunity for China to figure out what we're capable of and what our administration will do, how quickly we will react. And I think we failed on all accounts. And I hope that someone up there in Washington, D.C. is learning. It might not be the man in the White House, but hopefully maybe at least someone in the Pentagon is learning from this mistake, because I think it is potentially a huge, huge hiccup in what we've got going on. Yes?
Well, based on the height, if they were packing a nuke on that thing, it would have turned out the lights in probably at least a third of the country, if not more.
Yeah,
60,000 feet.
that was an EMP or, yeah, definitely huge, huge potential for problems there. Okay, that's enough about the China balloon. I just thought that's had hopefully been on our minds thinking through this, and so give you a few thoughts there. Let's talk about our subject tonight is I've kind of pulled it all together. We were going to talk about whether we choose to bug in, i.e. stay where we're at when it all hits the fan, or we're going to bug out, i.e. we have a place where we're planning on going to when everything hits the fan. So we're going to talk about bugging in, we're going to talk about bugging out, and then we're going to kind of lead into the end of the session tonight, talking about selecting property. And I know several people have mentioned to me, I'm kind of thinking about buying property. I live in the city now. I'm thinking about going, what should I look for? And so we're going to talk through some things about if you're trying to get a bug out location, or you're trying to move where you're at, what are some things you want to talk about and characteristics. So to begin this discussion, I really thought it would best start talking about the different types of people. And I originally labeled this slide the types of preppers. And we have different types of preppers, or different skill levels, different commitment levels, different budget levels, different amounts of time that you have to spend on being a prepper, quote unquote. But then I backed up and said, well, let's make this a little more broad. What are the different types of people regarding this issue? So we start out with the first type of person, and that's the person with no preparations at all. Y'all know any of those folks? You may have some, you may be one, I don't know. Hopefully you're not. If you're here, you've gotten beyond this stage. But no preparations at all. Maybe it's your neighbor, maybe it's family members, maybe it's the people who live in New York City that have to stop on the neighborhood market every day to get supper because they don't have any food in the counter or in the cabinets, to even feed them for that day. Yes, Alan?
I would separate that into two. One, those people who don't think there's anything to prepare for because nothing's going to happen, and those who think that something could happen, but they still don't make any preparations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great distinction.
You've got two branches of no prep.
Yeah. Either way, at the end, the result's the same. But yeah, definitely two different mindsets. People who don't even think about it. They truly think people like us are just absolutely nutcases. Okay? And I've met those people. They look at you weird and go, oh, you're one of those people. I'm like, yeah, I'm one of those people, But people with no preparations and they don't have a preparations mindset at all, and those that maybe have a little bit of a preparations mindset, but they've never done anything about it. So these are people who have nothing more prepared than what they would normally keep in their house day in, day out. So that's the first group there. And by the way, when we get to this whole list, and I think I've got 7 different options here, I'm going to ask you to think about where you are on this list. So as we go through there, you start thinking, oh, is that me? Is that not me? That kind of thing. The next thing is, and again, we're talking in the context of bug in, bug out. So you have someone who has preparations for bug in only. Okay? So they're going to bug in, but they don't have a bug out plan. Okay? So, that's where I was a lot of the time. Okay? I prepared, I had stuff in my house, and I had preparations there, but I didn't really have any kind of a plan if I was to leave my house. Okay, so I had no bug out plan. Then the next person might be people who have some preparations for bugging in, but they have very minimal, but they have some plan for bugging out. Now, if I were to try to put myself in any one of these 7 categories, this is probably the category I would put myself in. I've got good preparations for bugging in, and I have some, but somewhat minimal, preparations for bugging out. Okay? And we'll talk about why and all that type of thing. And when I say I put myself in this category, that doesn't mean because I think this is the best category to be in, but I'm just trying to be honest here and say this is where I'm at. Okay? So think about where you might fit. Next category is people who have some for both. They've got maybe a kind of a 50-50 plan. I'm half prepared to stay here and I'm half prepared to go. Okay? Then we have the people who are kind of the opposite of me. They have some preps for staying in place, but they have much more preps for going out. Okay? So I would call that kind of the opposite of me. Then we have preps, I call it on-the-go preps. Okay, these are people who all their resources they kind of keep in their home or in their current location, but they have an extensive plan to load and go. I think of watching I just went crazy. Alan, what was that TV show you were on? Doomsday Preppers, that's what I'm looking for. Some of the Doomsday Prepper episodes, if you've ever watched those, okay, you had the people who had the school bus, okay, and they had all their preps kind of in a fortified compound, but if it all hit the fan and they were forced out of there, they would literally load up pretty much everything they had into a school bus, and the school bus was going to be on the go. There was another family who had again, all their preps in their garage of their house, and they lived in a suburban, nice neighborhood, and they had an SUV and a trailer, a cargo trailer. And when it all hit the fan, they were going to all load all that stuff out of their house into the SUV and the cargo trailer, and they were hitting the road. Okay, so that's what I have deemed preps on the go. So it's kind of a bug in. They can stay there. But it's also a bug out location, but it's kind of on the go. They don't have preps in both places. They've only got preps in one place, but they have an extensive plan to take that on the go. Then we have those who are extensively prepared either way. And man, you've got a great compound for bugging in. You've got a great bug in location, and man, you've got an Atlas bunker underneath the ground, that's $1 million bug out location. And you've got both of those. And if you've got that, come talk to me. We want to have you teach. Okay? Those are people that probably have a deep pocket and a lot of time. What's that? Them elite leaders, yeah, maybe so. that you have someone doing it for them. But I'm sure we would all love to be in that category, but not all of us can afford to that, and not all of us have the time for that, and all that. But so these are the different types of people in general. Do you kind of have an idea of where you're at? Okay. Is where you're at where you want to stay? Are you happy where you're at? Is everybody trying to get down here to the bottom? See, I'm not really trying to get to the bottom. Okay? It ain't going to happen. But kind of think about where you're at, and then by the end of the time, when we get done talking tonight, you might have changed where you want to be on this list. Okay? And that type of thing. So, what kind are you? And is that where you want to be? So, bugging in and bugging out is not a definitive answer. Okay? It is a continuum. Okay, so we have on this side of the continuum, for example, we have bugging in. The circumstances, the situation, my preps, everything involved says I need to bug in. Okay, I need to stay where I'm at, and that's the best scenario for me. On this end of the continuum is bug out. The circumstances, the resources, the situation, my location, everything about it says I need to get out of here. Someplace else is better. And again, that decision, whether I'm going to bug in or whether I'm bugging out, is not definitive. Okay? Some of the factors in making that decision will be more towards bug in, and some of the factors in that decision in most cases will be towards bug out. Okay? So let's talk through this idea here. So the basic question is, am I going to be better here, staying where I'm at, or am I going to be better leaving and going somewhere else? Okay, so how do we answer that question? Well, the two main factors here, in my opinion, are the degree and amount of preparedness at each location. Okay, I am not at all a proponent of lone wolf or mobile prepping, living off the land and being nomadic. Okay, in my opinion, and we'll talk actually about those two things here a little bit later on, why I don't like lone wolf, why I don't like nomadic, living off the land ideas. I don't think that they'll be successful. So in just comparing a bug in location to a bug out location, okay, what is your degree and amount of preparedness at each location? That is a huge factor as to whether you're going to bug in or bug out. You got to decide, is my preparedness better here, or is my preparedness better there? Then, the second point there, the type and degree of the event and its conditions. In my opinion, this is actually a bigger factor than this in most decisions. Okay, what's going on and how is it affecting me where I'm at, as opposed to what's going on and how is it going to affect me if I go someplace else? Okay, so we'll talk about those. So, what should be your plan in the following situations? Let's look at a couple of, what should be your plan? In my opinion, you should have both a bug-in plan and a bug-out plan. If all your plans are, I'm going to stay here and nothing is going to make me move, I think you failed to prepare. If your plan is, I'm for sure leaving here and I'm going to location XYZ, I think you failed to prepare. I think you need to have both. Alan?
I would add a caveat to that, bugging out, that before you ever consider bugging out, you need to have a reasonable assurance that where you're going to, things will be better than where you are now. You don't want to jump out of the frying pan into the fire.
Absolutely. And again, the question is it better here or is it better there? And that's exactly a great point, Alan. And it's also important, we'll talk about this here in a minute, but what is the conditions between here and there? Yeah, so, I think it's going to be much better to go there, but to get there, what am I going to have to go through? You know, and so, that's a great point. Thank you, Alan. So let's talk through a couple of different scenarios. And again, these are just something I just came up with wild off. We in this group don't just talk about catastrophic scenarios. We try to talk about day-to-day preparedness on some things. So what if we just had a tornado warning for your immediate area? Is that a bug-in scenario or is that a bug-out scenario? I'm going to leave.
Let's get on the front porch and watch it come.
Oh, come on.
I've done that, not advisable.
Not advisable. That brings up a great story. When I was in college, I was a mall cop. Okay. By the way, I'm old enough that we did not ride segways. Just to make sure y'all know. Okay, just walk. But at Battlefield Mall, where I worked, when the tornado sirens went off, there were actually tornado shelters in the mall. They're the back corridors and that type of thing. And our job as mall security was to get everybody to the tornado shelters. Technically, the stores could close their door and could keep their customers inside their stores if they so chose, but anybody who was in the main hallways, the food court, etc., had to evacuate to these corridors. You don't want to know how many people wanted to evacuate to a corridor in the mall? Pretty much that amount, okay? But we couldn't let them stay in the mall. You know where they wanted to be? They did not want to be outside. You know those big glass entryways? They wanted to be right in that big glass entryway looking for the tornado. You know? Yeah, so run them off. And they're like, well, fine, I'm just going to leave. Okay, well, sorry, go get in your car. You know, you go to shelter. So that's funny. Yeah, we want to be on our front porch watching the tornado. Yes, sir.
Quick story. I was a floor warden at the FAA in Washington, D.C. My plan for people who didn't want to move, I'd pull out my phone, take their picture, say, what's that for? So we can identify the body later.
That's a good point. They would move all of a sudden. That's funny. I have to remember that one. Yeah. But in reality, do you want to be on the road or moving to a different location if there's a tornado warning in your immediate area? Most cases, you want to be heading to your shelter or to your basement. If you're smart, there will be some folks that will head to the front porch and that type of thing. But in my opinion, my answer to this week, this is a bug-in scenario. You're going to stay where you're at.
Can I make a side note on that?
Yeah.
When the siren stops, it doesn't necessarily mean the warning as it did. It very well could mean the siren is gone.
That's true.
As said well from someone from Joplin area, right? Wow.
It was sitting on the front porch when the siren stopped.
Yeah, that's a good warning.
It's actually true. A lot of them ran by electricity when electricity cuts to the siren stop.
Oh, no, it was.
And a lot of them will run for about 5 to 15 minutes and then has to cool down. So it'll stop like 5 to 10 minutes and then restart again. By that time, the thing's already passed.
That's a great warning. And then your people who live like me, there ain't no tornado sirens, so you just be well aware that is certainly an issue. Yes.
I think it also depends on the shelter that we're already living in, just living like in a trailer or something, to that effect. When I was younger, we all ran my nan's house.
If it's nearby, absolutely. I mean, something close. I know my ex-wife's family lived in Oklahoma, and they lived in a trailer on one side of the highway, and the people across the highway had a basement, so they would always go across the highway to the basement. But in general, you probably want to stay put, and if it's in your immediate area, that's good. Well, I'm in a hazmat class for my fire department training right now, so I'm thinking a lot about hazardous material spills. But the train accident that happened this last week, that was a big deal. What if you had a large hazardous material spill nearby? Are you bugging in, or are you bugging out? Yeah, getting out and hopefully going upwind. Absolutely. Yeah. Another scenario, again, that you're definitely probably going to leave. So we have one scenario where you're definitely probably going to stay. We have another scenario where you're going to leave. Where are you going to go to? I mean, the people this week in that area have been asked to leave for days. You know, I'm sure there are certain scenarios where you may be asked for even weeks or something like that to have to leave your area. Do you have a plan where you would go? And do you have a plan of getting there quickly? Loading stuff up, loading the important things up, and getting out of there. And so that's why it's, again, important to always have a bug out plan, even if your primary plan is to bug in. Okay, we've all lived through this one. If you had a pandemic, we had it again. And again, we're not talking political. We're not trying to get political here. It's about what you think about the pandemic. But if you had something again happen, if we had a repeat of COVID 2 happened, are you bugging in or are you bugging out?
What if you have a pandemic where people are just dropping dead everywhere?
Or if it's more serious than COVID? A real pandemic. You know, I had people in some of the different, groups that I'm in that were really like, this is it. I'm bugging out. I'm going off grid. You will not hear from me again, because they thought like this is the end of the world as we know it. And I'm sitting back going, really? This is your cross the line to end of the world as we know it is what we experienced with COVID?
How long did they stay gone?
I don't know. That's a great question. You know, I think some people's line in the sand of this is the end of the world as we know it probably was a little bit too far one direction, premature, too far one direction or the other. So, but again, think about it. What if it was worse than COVID? What if it was regional? What if something, I don't know, monkey flu or something was going around southwest Missouri? Would you bug in or would you bug out? What's that?
They're going to quarantine off the area anyway. You won't be allowed to leave.
Won't be allowed to leave. That's possible. Sure, yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, you got to be ahead of it.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to talk about timing here in a little bit, getting out. What about an EMP? What if that China balloon had not been, quote unquote, a surveillance balloon? What if it had been an EMP? What if it had been a nuclear device that they set off at 60,000 feet over Missouri, or someplace where it affected the vast majority of the United States? Yeah. We wouldn't be here tonight. So are you bugging in? Or are you bugging out? Are you got a place you're going to? And again, I'm not asking everybody to vote and say, tell us your plans. But think through that. Am I staying put for the most part? And I'm prepared to stay put? Or is this a scenario where you're going, we've crossed the line,
It's a timing thing too.
I'm going out? Absolutely. Timing thing, yeah, absolutely, yes.
If there is, you're gonna need a horse and carriage to get around. Almost all your vehicles are gonna be SOL.
You know, and there are varying degrees of that, and obviously, I don't think anything's been fully tested there. But I can say this, someone came out since this China balloon thing, and I'm trying to think who it was. It was someone in the know, maybe Arthur Bradley. I think it was Arthur Bradley that I was getting my information from Forrest Garvin. That basically, both China and Russia have developed super EMP weapons. And that most of the stuff we have learned over the last few decades about EMPs is somewhat out the window. Because these super EMP weapons are designed specifically to defeat a traditional low decibels of attenuation, that's effectiveness there, low decibel of attenuation Faraday cages and that type of stuff. And all of our EMP protections need to make sure that we are doing extra decibels protection, more protection on those Faraday cages and those devices and that type of thing. You know, I have a device, whole house device. I have a car device and those types of things, and they've all both had, you know, $25,000 damage guarantees. Well, yeah, if an EMP actually strikes and my device doesn't work, I'm not planning on collecting my $25,000. Okay, I know that. I'm not that gullible. But I also know that we've kind of gotten off to a different topic here. At least the ones that I've put in my house are supposedly built according to mil spec, and so, you know, hopefully the government knows something about protecting their own equipment there. So I know it's kind of rolling a die and trying to protect, but it's better than nothing. I've got the Faraday cages too. But anyway, so if an EMP happens, I have, it's made by Siemens. It's sold, I got mine from Dr. Arthur Bradley, but it's very similar to the one that is now sold. He doesn't sell them anymore, to the one sold by EMP Shield. Yeah.
Seriously, FS-140?
Yes, it's that type of device.
I've been trying to find those for a while. They've been unobtainable in a lot of
Unobtainable, yeah. So they're, and again, we won't spend too much time, but it's a device. This is the whole house device. It's a device about yay big, okay, about that thick, about the size of a brick, okay, an actual brick. And it wires into your whole house electrical panel. And supposedly it's supposed to attenuate or stop an EMP and lightning strikes and power surges and all that type of thing. And I do know I've had a significant power surge that it did stop. And it didn't ruin the device. They're about $400, $300-400. There's a coupon code that you can use if you want to try that, but Safety First is the coupon code for EMPshield.com or for Dr. Arthur Bradley's site, Disaster Preparer. It'll work on either one and give you 10% off.
What's Bradley's site?
DisasterPreparer.com. That's Dr. Arthur Bradley's site. And he has some different stuff. His is a little bit different. He's a NASA engineer that supposedly his job is to engineer the satellites to protect against all kinds of things, including EMP. And supposedly he takes that technology and he sells these devices. And I have some of those too, and I hope they work. You know, you won't really know until it all happens.
Safety First, is that his first spelled out?
Yes, it's spelled out, and just kind of like that, if you could read that. No space between it or anything, just Safety First. Nuclear attack. So again, we're talking scenarios. If there was a nuclear attack, and it was very close, and you want me to define very close? If, let's say it went off in Joplin.
No, that's not close.
That's not close, okay. I don't know.
That's in the region.
That's in the region. Okay, it's closer. It went off in Republic.
It went off downtown Springfield.
Downtown Springfield, that's close. You know, so are you bugging in that scenario?
Depending on the yield and wind direction.
Yeah. I guess my idea by saying very close is close enough that you're going to feel the effects, maybe not the initial blast wave, you know, within 5 miles, but you're going to quickly feel the radiological effects. Do you bug in? Do you bug out? And again, tons of factors here. Which direction is it from you? Which way is the wind blowing? How close was it? How big of a device was it, which you won't really know? You know, tons and tons of factors. But it's just this idea of it's so close that your initial shelter, your bug-in location, might be compromised. And if that is the case, do you have a bug-out plan? Now,
One factor, here in southwest Missouri, if there's a nuclear detonation that's relatively close, you can probably count on there's a lot of other detonations all around the country as well. And so, nobody's coming to help.
nobody's coming to help. Yeah.
If your location's actually been compromised, then going outside from the
If it's in Springfield, Hiroshima type yield, it's going to take out almost all of Springfield. Almost all. 20-mile radius.
Flatten it.
No, probably 5 miles, and the concussion, the blast, the heat, probably 20 miles.
Yeah, so,
And that's a small one. Hiroshima, Nagasaki are small ones.
yeah, those bombs were very small compared to what we have now.
No, those are 14 kilotons. They make 50 megaton weapons.
So, you know, but just compare that what your plan might be for something that was very close to something if there was a nuclear attack and it wasn't close. You know, maybe there was, you know, we get in an exchange with Russia or China or North Korea and they hit Los Angeles and they hit Kansas City and they hit New York and they hit Washington, D.C. and they hit, you know, Dallas, Texas or whatever. And they hit multiple places, but not necessarily something super close to us. Does that affect your bug in versus your bug out idea? Kind of the whole reason, and this is all the scenarios I have here. I kind of did these scenarios to try to throw in some things that were for sure we're going to stay put, and some things that are kind of for sure we're going to leave. Okay? To kind of get everybody in the mindset of, I don't want you to be a one or the other. I'm hoping that everybody, by the time we end this class, will be of the idea that I need to have at least some kind of a plan both ways. Now, it may be like kind of my scenario is, where I have my predominant plan is one way, but I do have some plans in case I need to take the other avenue. Okay? So with that in mind, let's talk about your determinants. Now what I mean by determinants is these are the points that I'm going to consider on my continuum. Again, the continuum is the line. This side is I'm staying here. This side is I'm going out. What are the things I'm going to consider in my mind? And most of these things, you need to have thought about them ahead of time, because when it comes time to make that I'm bugging out or I'm bugging in decision, you probably will end in a life-changing situation. You're going to have a lot of stress, and what you're not going to have is a lot of time. So start thinking through these things. By the way, your notes tonight are kind of lacking. I ran out of time this week, and so you have a half of a blank sheet on the front and a full blank sheet on the back. Feel free to if you want to write some of these things down, but I didn't write them down for you, okay? So resources, compare. Again, talking about where I'm at now, or where I could stay now, to where I could go to. How are my resources at each location? Where's my food at? Where's my water storage? Where's my protection devices? We'll use that politically correct statement. Yes?
I was talking to a buddy a couple of weeks ago. He said that, and I haven't done the research on it myself, but he said that Springfield, which so far here recently has been voted the second most dangerous in Missouri now.
Crime-wise.
Right. Due to the population and everything, according to him, our history has shown that during wars, our city, amongst others, have become sort of like a FEMA camp. Sort of like they compounded it with military or what have you. It's kind of, like I said, I have not done my own research and checked on it myself, but I don't know, I just thought I'd put that out there. There could be resources here, but it could be a little more like an institutionalized setting, you know, and then it's not personally my preference, but.
Absolutely.
Right. But for those that are elderly or weak or what have you, you know, they're not be able to travel. Anyway, anybody else have anything about it?
About 10 bit of information for you. If the new Madrid fault line goes off, everybody from southeast Missouri, Boot Hill, all the way up to St. Louis is coming this way. I've seen the plan. Ask me how I know. And they will be coming down Highway 60, stopping in Webster County to get dispersed. It's all in the plan. The plan's like this big. It's like a ring of paper big.
Who's gonna get dispersed?
All the people fleeing the earthquake.
From the earthquake.
Crisis relocation.
It's crisis really, exactly. And they'll be going everywhere from Bentonville to Springfield up to Kansas City, and they're going to be based on availability and need, but it's all coming right through Webster County.
So he's talking about, just to make sure we clarify, the New Madrid Falls, which is again over southeast Missouri along the Mississippi River, which was back in, when was that? It lasted 1800s, was the most significant earthquake ever recorded in North America, modern times.
They just had a 3-point-something event.
Yeah, and so, you know, we just had a big one in Turkey a few weeks ago, if you've been following that. So if that same thing hit New Madrid, his point is the emergency management plan says everybody west of the Mississippi, that would be St. Louis and the Boot Hill, are going to be told to evacuate our direction.
They absolutely evacuate this way.
So you take Hurricane Katrina, where everybody came north, and you multiply that. And we're also a lot further away from New Orleans than we are from St. Louis and the Boot Hill. So we're going to get more of it. So that's interesting. So, but look at your resources. And again, what I'm talking about here is resources that you have in your possession for the most part. So when you're talking food and water, your resources that you have prepared, are they here or are they there? And that's going to be one of the determinants of where you stay and whether you go. Also, you might consider there is how much can I take with me? If you don't have the school bus ready to go, or the SUV with the trailer, which, by the way, relying on something like that for your plan might not be a great idea because those things may not operate, or the roads may be clogged, or maybe dangerous or whatever. But where are your resources at? And if you're going to have to move some of those resources, how much can you move with you? But I'm specifically talking about physical things here when we talk about resources here. Yes?
You know, one of the things that I'm aware of is no man is an island.
No man is what?
Is an island.
Okay, no man is an island, yeah.
And no one can prepare for everything.
Absolutely.
But in a community of trusted people, responsibilities can be delegated and friendships and alliances, that's the word, can be made where some older folks may be able to come in with a lot of skills that were learned in the past generation, and younger people can be the muscle to wield the axe because the chainsaw doesn't work anymore, and et cetera, all the way down the line. I know that I can't defend my immediate shelter for very long. So I've looked into trusted organizations. You know, some of it could be churches, fraternal things where you have deep, you know, long-rooted, deep-seated
Trusted connections.
Connections where they have more different assets than you have, and you know, I have 3 fallbacks. If it gets this dicey here, I can go there, and I can take X amount with me. When we get to this second location, if it gets dicey there, all of that little community then has another location which is a little bit more remote, where you're going to start a little village.
You know, Alan has talked to us before about MAG, or Mutual Assistance Groups. I think you call them a HAG. Homestead Augmentation Group. But the idea is no man is an island. I can't survive very long by myself in an environment that's going to be most likely very hostile. So unless I've got an underground bunker that I can live completely self-contained for years, yeah, and totally hide, you really can't live by yourself. If you're going to poke your head up at all, you know, and get back to society, you're going to have others with you. And that's one of the reasons I started this group 3 years ago, is because I saw that need, that I needed other like-minded people. That is also the reason why, and I see very few of you complying, but it is optional, but why I encourage the name tags with your city on them. Okay? So that hopefully this is a somewhat safe environment where you can begin making connections and networking. And if you find someone who's in your general area, you can build a friendship. You can build a trusted situation to where you may have some folks that you can rely on in this situation. Because I think it is absolutely vital. Absolutely. Okay, environment. So what we're talking about here, again, determining whether I'm here or I'm there. Okay, what is the environment like? What is it outside? If I step outside, can I breathe? Or can I not breathe? Because there was a biological contamination, or there was whatever. Radiation. You know, is the environment outside good or bad? The ability and safety to travel. Okay, really kind of 2 aspects. Safety, we'll talk about that one first. Safety is just, is it safe for me to travel? Has it turned violent already? You know, is someone going to shoot me on sight because it's just not safe? Then the other is the ability. You know, it might be somewhat safe, but if the roads are clogged because an EMP hit and all the vehicles are dead, And even if I had a vehicle that could drive, am I going to be able to get through? You know, or is my ability going to be limited to a bicycle or what I can walk? So that's a real determining factor. If your bug out location is 100 miles away and your only way of getting there is your 2 feet, you've got to take that into consideration. Is it doable? Absolutely. You can get there in a number of days. Okay? Depending on your physical condition and all kinds of things. But, you know, is it doable? So that's a determinant. You know, again, we're talking this continuum. Stay here, don't stay here, I leave. Do you have the ability to travel? And is it going to be safe to travel? Overwhelming force or violence. Again, we're not talking here about the ability, when we're traveling, what I'm talking about is the threat to you at your bug out location. If you've been in your bug out location for, let's say, a couple of months, but you're aware enough to know that the rule of law has changed, and the new warlord for your area, who is now the de facto ruler, is coming for you because he knows you have stuff. Is that a bug in situation, or is that a bug out situation?
Say you've already bugged out, and you're at your bug out location.
Well, you're already at your bug out location, and this is the scenario.
Bug out squared?
Yeah, you go to that alternate location. I got another location. You talked about that, and we'll talk about that here, having multiple locations. But it's one of those scenarios, and this is one of the things that makes me make sure that, yes, I have a really good bug-in location, but I still also have a bug-out plan with multiple location possibilities. It's not my first choice to bug out, but there might be scenarios where overwhelming force is coming my way. You know, if the warlord has the idea of, you give me your stuff, or I'm going to burn your house down, it's hard to defend my place against someone who's determined to burn my house down. You know, it's hard to stay inside and shoot when they're burning it down. You know, so if there's this overwhelming force, is it going to change my plan? Am I prepared for that? Talking about mutual assistance group. Again, determining whether we stay where we're at or we go somewhere else. Where are my family? Where are my friends that I trust? And where is my mutual assistance group? The people that are here to help me. Where are they at? Are they where I'm at right now? Or are they where I'm going? Most likely, you're going to want to be where they're at. Okay? And then constantly be re-evaluating for changes. You know, it's hard for us, at least it is for me, to even contemplate what a scenario like this looks like. We can watch all the movies we want, all the TV shows we want, read the books. My daughter is reading for college. One of her college classes is actually assigned the book 1 second after, about the EMP thing. And great book. Kind of helps us understand how things might change and how dangerous things might be. But I honestly think we don't really have the ability to fully contemplate what this scenario looks like. But one thing I do know is we need to constantly be evaluating what we're doing to see if we need to change whether we're bugging in or we're bugging out. Alan?
What college and what class is that?
That is College of the Ozarks down in Point Lookout, okay? Hard Work U, and it's for her class on terrorism.
Oh, okay.
She is a criminal justice major, so she has to take a class on terrorism.
Probably not gonna get that assigned at MSU or Mizzou.
Probably not.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was excited to hear that that's one of her assigned books she has to read and write a paper on. So, time is likely of the essence. Once we know we're in a situation to where I've got, this is happening. The end of the world as we know it, rule of law is changing, Some people ask me, well, we talked earlier about the guy that had posted on Facebook, which I thought was an interesting place to post it, about how he was bugging out. It was the time, during COVID. And that was his point of, this is all different. In my head, what I think that time is when you call 911, either you can't call 911, or 911 does not answer, or they don't send anybody.
Well, that can happen now.
Well, it can in certain situations. But in general, when that is happening widespread, that's when I think everything's gone too far. I need to be into my plan. As long as law enforcement's coming when I call, the fire department comes when I call, EMS comes when I call, then everything is reasonably controllable. But when that stuff stops happening widespread, when I can't call for the sheriff's deputy, when I can't call with the medical emergency or whatever, that's, in my opinion, when it has crossed the line. That's kind of my line of demarcation. In my head, it may be different when I get there, but that's what I'm thinking. But time is of the essence. We have to make these decisions quickly many times because, I think Katie was talking about in her book she was reading. I think that was the conversation we were having this week. What are other people's reaction? And she was like, yeah, in the book, some of these people didn't even know, an EMP happened, and they didn't even know what had happened. They didn't figure out what was happening for 2 or 3 or 4 days. I hope that if an EMP happens, I can immediately recognize that. Because our ability to immediately recognize the significance of the situation we're in gives us a huge jump on all the other people who are like, oh, my phone doesn't work. I wonder why. Oh, my car won't start either. How come all the lights are off? And hopefully we can recognize of the variety of things that could happen quickly so that we can make those timely decisions quickly before everybody else panics. Because once everybody else panics and violence starts and riots start and that type of thing, we pretty much better be where we're going to be, because most likely at that point in time it's unsafe to go somewhere else. So that jump on it that we should be aware of, it could potentially be our lifesaver when we still have an opportunity to get from one location to another safely. So let's start talking about your primary bug out location. So if you've got a bug out location that you already own, now some people are planning, I'm bugging out to, have you ever heard the people, I'm bugging out to the National Forest. Yeah. I actually had that as part of my plan at one point in time. Many years ago, I'm like, I can go to the National Forest, the Mark Twain National Forest, and I can hunt, and I can gather, and I can live off the stream that's there, and I know it because I go out there regularly and I go camping. Is that really a great plan? It's not a good plan. And we'll talk about that. But so when I say here, your primary bug out location, if you've got a bug out location, it needs to be something you own or you personally know the owner. So it's a friend's place that I trust this friend knows I'm coming, etc. Okay? So something you own, a place you already have resources in place. Okay, so I've already got some of my resources there. Maybe it could be a cache that's buried, something like that, but it has some of your resources there. Again, it should be a place, and this should be all of our goals, where we're always improving, always trying to be better. And I assume that if you're here at this meeting tonight, you're here because your goal is you're trying to improve your level of preparedness. So hopefully you're always improving. It would be ideal if your bug out location was ready to the point that you could just show up. That's all you need to do is just show up. And if you just showed up, you've got the food, you've got the water, you've got energy sources, you've got, weapons for defense. You've got everything you need already there. It's set up and ready to go. Because the less you have to bring with you to your bug out location, the more likely it is that you will be able to get there and that you will be successful. If your bug out location is, I have this location I'm going to, but there's nothing there already, I've got to bring it all with me. And then you end up in the scenario with your only mode of transportation is your 2 feet. How much can you actually carry and get there and be successful? Okay? Most likely not much. Okay? So it's really important that it's kind of just ready for you to show up. Okay? Examples. Here's some examples of places that you might want to consider. And we're going to talk a lot about selecting a property here in a minute, but examples be a hunting cabin. Some place that's remote, it's set up, it's got, the basic necessities already there, it's got a place to sleep, it's got, a camping stove, it's got a place you can have food and water set up in a vacation home. I know not everybody's able to afford 2 houses, the house you live in town and a vacation home in the mountains, but some of you can. Some of you can start small. Maybe the vacation home is an RV trailer that you pull up there and you live in. Something like that. It's just an alternate location that's your bug out location that you can set up. An old farm. Old farms have a lot of positive things about them. Especially if they're very rural, very off the beaten path, but they may already have a well, they may have barns set up, fields for crops, all that type of thing and ready to go. Or maybe you've got a bunker at an undisclosed location that you're not going to tell any of us about. I know that in Kansas they have turned the Atlas, some of the Atlas silos, and one of them they turned into like 7 levels, and it's like $2 million a level, and you can have your own place, and the bottom level is a swimming pool, and they got all the aquaponics and hydroponics set up, and workout rooms and all that. And when anyone would admit that they've spent the $2 million and you've got a space there, yeah. If that's you, you're probably not here tonight. Okay, you're set and good to go. Interesting thing, some of you know that I owned a 2.8 million square foot underground cave in Atchison, Kansas for a while. I bought it from the government. It was the world's largest military base underground that was ever sold to the public, and I bought it. And as part of that, I had the guy that sells all these bunkers and former Atlas silos and Nike missile silos. He came and toured my place and helped me sell it when I sold it. But he was an interesting guy to get to meet and to know. Kind of a little bit odd, but he probably thought I was odd too, and probably a lot of people think I'm odd. But anyway, I thought he was a little bit odd, but he was a good guy to meet. But anyway, so if you've got this underground bunker in an undisclosed location, those are really cool. I've looked at some of the old communication bunkers that AT&T had that have a few thousand square feet underground. I'd love to have one of those some point in time. But
why did you sell it?
Yeah.
Why did I sell it? It was a big money pit. The utility bill was $20,000 a month. The ventilation system was 2.8 million square feet, which is about 60 acres, so that's like 60 football fields underground. It's like the Springfield Underground. If you're familiar with the Springfield Underground, it's the same type of a facility, limestone facility. And the last thing that was stored there was 3,000 Humvees. That's what the Army had stored down there, was 3,000 Humvees. And but the ventilation system, to keep it dehumidified, because these underground facilities have moisture problems, and so you got to keep it dry or it'll grow mold and that type of thing. The ventilation system, one system ventilated and dehumidified all 2.8 million square feet. So it's a huge system. And the utility bill on that was $20,000 a month. And if you turned it off, it pretty much, the humidity started immediately increasing, and within a few days, you would have mold growing. And once you started mold growing in that place, you would never stop it. And so you couldn't turn off that $20,000 a month. And so as a business venture, I never made it super successful, so I decided to sell it. So I kept it about 2 years and then I sold it. Anyway.
What the government sell it for?
What I buy it for is the question there? Yeah. Okay. You want me to tell you? Interesting story. You got me on a sidetrack here, but we got a little extra time. Okay, so yeah, that's my bunker mine undisclosed. It was in Atchison, Kansas. It was called the Atchison Storage Facility, and they had it for about 60 years. They bought it in the 1940s.
That's right
and,
across from St. Joe?
Yeah, right across from St. Joe. And they turned it. What's that?
A bunch of weed up there for Farmer Direct Foods.
Weed or wheat?
Wheat.
Wheat, okay. Just clarifying. I know you, Alan. Okay. Anyway, so they had bought it, and it was a limestone mine, and the government bought it. They were the first ones to ever convert, like the Springfield Under, ever convert a limestone mine into underground storage. And it was bought by the U.S. War Food Administration following the end of World War II, like 1946. And they bought it and turned it into the world's largest refrigerator. And they refrigerated the place and stored food in there in the Cold War era. Then, after about 20 years, they moved in machinery that was used to produce weapons and put in some secret document vaults and that type of stuff in there. And then they eventually moved that stuff out and moved in the Army surplus stuff, which was Humvees. It was the last thing that was in there. And then they put it up for auction. And I bought it sight unseen off of an online auction from the GSA. And they estimated the facility was worth $310 million. At least that's what the government put into it. Now, you know what the government does, spends money. But it was $310 million. It had all concrete floors, all lighting throughout, the ventilation system, offices, break rooms, bathrooms, everything. I picked it up for a little over $500,000 cash. And so I got a really good deal. But you had to immediately pick up that utility bill. Anyway. Okay.
All those confidential documents now are at your place.
Exactly. And they're all obsolete. No.
You have in your garage next to your bed.
Don't let the FBI know. Anyway, okay. We got way off there. I don't know how we got there. Okay. So bug out locations. Okay, so your last resort bug out locations. And this is kind of where I'm at, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm trying to be transparent here, and I know some people are going, man, you just give way too much information about yourself. I probably do. But I'm trying to be transparent here in the idea of helping you guys out. This is probably where I'm at. And that is, I've got a great bug in location, but it's going to take a significant change of circumstances for me to bug out. So if I bug out, I have what I call last resort bug out locations. And I've got 3 locations set up for me. I have one that is close, it's within 10 miles. And this is a situation where maybe I think I'm going to get raided. I'm not talking an FBI raid, I'm talking like the warlord is coming in. I've been bugging in, and all of a sudden they figured out where I'm at and they're coming in. And so I've got an alternate location that I can get to fairly quickly in 10 miles or less. And I've actually got 3 people that I know now that are within this 10-mile area, and I would probably end up going to one of their places. Does that make sense there? Then I've got that intermediate location, which is something that I really need to get out of this specific area a little further, but still doable, something 25 to 100 miles. What I've got in my head that I would go to is about 60 miles away. You know, so something a little bit further away, but that I could get to. And then there's something that would be distant. And I'm thinking here, you know, I have family in Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas. And so this would probably be hitting up one of those things. And this is something like, you know, a nuclear event happened in the Springfield specific region. And I had to get out of this area. Where would I go? Probably one of those 100+ mile places, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas kind of a thing. And I don't have a lot of preps at these locations, so this would be one of the situations that I'm going to have to take what I can with me, and I'm going to have to rely on what's already there prepared. And so I don't really want to go to any of these scenarios, but I do have a plan that I've worked out and I've tried to make happen. Yes?
The hard part about that intermediate distance is that's going to be the situation for everybody. And anything that's on the road is fair game.
Absolutely. Yeah. The close is not a big deal. Not a big deal. That's something, one of my backup transportation methods is simply a bicycle. Bicycles are cheap. They're easy to store. I've saved a few extra inner tubes, and that kind of thing. And I have a bicycle cart that you pull behind a bicycle with that we could load some stuff on. So going 10 miles or less, I could do it on foot. I could maybe do it on my ATV. I could do it in my car. I could do it on my bicycle. I have different options for that, and it makes it a fairly possible scenario. But you're absolutely right. When we go to the intermediate, and for especially the distant, how are you going to get there? Are you going to have, even if you have a working vehicle, and even if the roads were somewhat accessible, are you going to have enough fuel to get there? Because are the gas stations all along the way going to be working? How many of you, I'm sure most of you do, remember the ice storms from 2007, 2008? How accessible was fuel at that time? The gas stations all had gasoline in the tanks in the ground, but what couldn't they do? They couldn't pump it out. They didn't have electricity. I had a friend who's an electrician I went to church with, and he got booked solid after that, during that time, with gas stations calling him saying, I need a generator, I need it now, because I could sell all the gas I could at any price I wanted if I could just get it out of the ground. So if you have a plan where you're going to bug out, how are you going to get there? Do you have fuel to go? Is your car going to work? Are the roads going to be clear? You've got a four-wheel drive that can go off-road or at least drive on the shoulder. You see all these hurricane scenarios where they're evacuating and the road is just packed with cars. I'm thinking, why isn't somebody driving on the shoulder? I got a four-wheel drive truck. If I'm really wanting to get out of there, I'm going to be getting out of there. In these scenarios, I'm driving any way I can get through to get where I'm going, if my vehicle is operable. Okay, purchasing property. I've had a number of folks inquire about, I'm trying to buy a piece of property. What should I look for? What should I not? Some of these things are common sense. Some of them are not. And in my opinion, there's probably, unless you got lots and lots of money, there's probably not the perfect property. However, these are some things you need to consider. And, things that I considered when I was buying, and again, I did not get the perfect property, but I think I got a good piece of property. And it's a matter of what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not willing to compromise on. So, first question you need to ask yourself, these are all questions you need to ask before you start considering, is who is the property for? Obviously it's for you, but who else do you plan on coming to that piece of property? Okay? It makes a lot of difference when you're planning this thing out. So you need to have in mind, who do I anticipate bugging out to this location? How much money do I have to spend? Okay? Maybe you're the guy that has unlimited money. Great. I'm not. I have a limited budget, and most people do. So how much are you willing to spend for the right piece of property? How quickly do you want to complete this project? If you're wanting a cookie cutter, already done property, then that's one thing. If you're willing to start with blank land and make it what you want, that's going to take extra time. So how quickly do you want this? Do you want it move-in ready? Or are you willing to take several years to develop your homestead or your property? And how much work do you want to do? How much work are you physically able to do? And how much work do you have the knowledge and skills to do? If you have a construction background and you can build your bug out location from scratch, that's fabulous. If you got the time to do it, that is great. But if you don't have the skills to do it, do you have the money to pay someone to do it? So how much work do you want to do, and how much work are you willing to pay to have done? What general location do you want? And, you know, what climate do you want? Do you want a warm climate, cold climate? Do you want to go homestead in Alaska? Okay? Or are you like, I don't want cold, I want, you know, Yuma, Arizona. You know, totally different climates. What climate do you want? I love the Ozarks because we kind of get 4 seasons. Okay? And I see on some of the different forums and different things that I'm on for preppers, people asking, what's a great location? I would say I love Southwest Missouri, Northwest Arkansas, this general region. It has a lot of great potential regarding the climate, but you need to determine that. I'm going to use Dan here for an example here, but Dan, you used to be a resident of which state?
Central Florida.
Central Florida. And he came here, and I think his decision at this point was, I do not want to be in Central Florida. Where do I want to be? And he chose the Ozarks area.
How about Idaho? Between Central Florida and Idaho, there's a huge climate difference, especially during the cooler months. Like right now, I said, I think. But when I did do a nationwide work search. I created a trade study, a lot of different factors, things that was important. And after going through this trade study for a period of time, the Ozarks came out on top. I wanted to be west of Mississippi, because most of the population density, and that's the thing to look at, population density. It's on east of that Mississippi. If something happens, you got to get across that river, there's only a few places to do it. So I want to be over here. My daughter had relocated to Denver, so I wanted to be closer to her. I thought about Colorado, but other factors there.
You mean the lack of freedom?
Yeah. There, and cost, property cost. You gotta look at that. So I looked at several multiple factors. The Ozarks came out as an area that is why I chose this region.
Yeah, absolutely. So, good. Thank you. So, other things. Those are questions you need to ask yourself. Then as you start looking at specific pieces of property, what size of property do you want? What are some thoughts on that? If you were going to buy a piece of property for a bug-out location or for your bug-in location, that's fine, either one. What size of property would you look for? Anybody want to volunteer an answer? Alan?
Large enough to be relatively self-sufficient, growing your own food. Could
Large?
be growing your own food on the hoof or growing your own food in the garden.
My guess would be 10 to 20 acres.
10 to 20 acres, good.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah, my thought, and again, just my thought, is it's going to have to be at least 5 acres. You know, with the idea of if you're going to grow it on the hoof or you're going to grow it in the garden or whatever, as well as kind of just a buffer zone from your neighbors, you know, for protection reasons, but at least 5 acres. You know, preferably 10 acres. Out of sight, out of mind. And the more you can have, the more buffer you might have, you know, for protection and that type of thing. But at least 5 in my opinion, and preferably 10. How much wooded and how much open land do you want? And again, it depends on how much you start with in the beginning, you know. But I think if you need at least, kind of my thoughting is several acres that are open for either pasture or for crops, and then several acres that are wooded, more for hunting as well as firewood. That's exactly firewood. Several acres for that. So you know you kind of want a little bit of a mix. If you get all wooded, and then you want to clear some land for a pasture or for a crop, there's a lot of work involved, particularly after the fact, after it's all hit the fan, in clearing land for that. And if you have, all you got is a field, you have no significant trees, and you want trees, How hard is that? It's not hard at all. It just takes a long time. You know, I've told people before, if you have a choice, get something that already has trees, because you can, in a relatively short period of time with the right work, you can make it a pasture. But it takes a long time to make a pasture into woods, you know, and so, but think through that. When I'm looking at pieces of property, how much land is for sale? How much do I need? And what is the ratio of wooded to open for your needs? What is the soil like?
Rocks.
We're in Missouri. We grow rocks. You know, that's why we have great rock gardens. You know, but if you have some bottom land, you know, that might be better soil for gardening. You know, there's a lot of pieces of property you could buy in Southwest Missouri that have zero tillable ground. You know, you're going to have to go raise beds, but that needs to be a plan. Putting in a huge raised bed is going to take work and money and that type of thing. So look at the soil. By the way, one of the things that I've done is I've had my soil tested in the garden areas. How do you get your soil tested? MU Extension Office, Cooperative Extension Office. So every county has an MU Cooperative Extension Agency. You can literally scoop up your soil, and they have instructions online so that you do it properly or whatever, and a little form you fill out. But literally, you scoop your soil up, and there's a way you do it. And put it in a Ziploc baggie, take it to the MU office with the paperwork. They'll send it in for like $10, and you'll get a report on your soil. Okay, it's pretty simple. And again, if you're interested in that, go to the MU Extension Agency's website, do soil sample. They'll give you instructions in the form, and you can do that. But look at the soil. Is it good? Look at the terrain. You know, it is very easy to find a piece of property in this area of the country that is all up or down. There's nothing flat about it. And there are good reasons that you need at least some area that may be flat. Maybe to build your house, maybe for your crops, your garden, and those type of things. But look at the terrain of it. The other thing about the terrain, and it comes to another point we'll make later on, but terrain is really important for defensibility. Okay, so we'll talk about defensibility here in a minute, but consider that. What are the resources that piece of property has? Does it have, probably the most important one there is water. What kind of water does that property have? Literally anywhere in Southwest Missouri, you can have a well drilled. Okay, anywhere, which is a great thing. As a matter of fact, the property may already have a well, but it's important you understand the characteristics of that well that's already there. Is it deep enough? Is the water good? What kind of pump and that type of thing? But what is the well water situation? What is the natural water situation? Does it have a creek or a river or a pond? That type of thing. Does it have a spring? Again, maybe divulging too much information here, but that was one of the #1 selling points when I bought my property. It has a natural spring that produces 100 gallons an hour, 24/7. That is 2,400 gallons of clean, drinkable water every day. That's a huge benefit to me. Okay? As a matter of fact, that becomes a big bargaining tool potentially, as long as I can protect it. You know, to have clean, drinkable water. What is the wildlife situation? Almost any rural property that we have in Southwest Missouri area is going to have some good wildlife, at least initially after it all hits the fan. But there's going to have wildlife opportunities. And then food. And when I'm talking about food here, I'm talking about wild growing food. Does it have some, you know, bushes, trees, plants that produce food that you could just forage? You know, and so those are good things. The specific location. So, and this is an important thing, proximity to populations. You know, something that is on the city limits of Springfield might not be the best location. It's just too close to populations. Certainly, you wouldn't want to be, you know, in St. Louis or Kansas City or any of those places. But where is it, and how close is it to populations? The ideal situation for most preppers is the further away, the better. But it also depends on your stage in life. If you're having, well, let's say you're trying to find a place that's as far away from Springfield as possible. Well, that's great. But what if you work every day in Springfield? It may not be super convenient on a daily basis before it all hits the fan. You know, so you gotta consider all these factors out.
It may also depend on the spouse also.
Absolutely.
Within 15 minutes of a Walmart and not on a gravel road.
Absolutely. Walmart is really important. You know, one of the real estate questions that real estate agents get asked a lot is, how close is the closest Walmart? Why? Because we spend a lot of time and money at Walmart, and we go there multiple times. But proximity to populations, consider that. Proximity to roads. Major roads, not ideal to be really close to a major road. If your property adjoins Interstate 44, that's probably not the best ideal situation. It may be something you're willing to live with increased security and that type of thing, but it may not be ideal. Hordes of people may be walking down Interstate 44, you know, and taking out whatever's nearby. But also roads, you know, Alan brought up the idea of dirt roads. You know, paved roads to your location, how much dirt roads to your location, do the dirt roads wash out? Maybe you want them to wash out. Maybe that's part of your defense plan. Maybe you want lots of dirt roads and you're at the very, very, very end of that dirt road. As a matter of fact, it's such a bad road that most people would think it's not even a road. No one could possibly live down there. That would actually be an absolutely ideal situation once it all hits the fan. You know, I can't even tell that's a road there. But on a day-to-day basis, that might not be desirable. Again, specific location as it relates to your family or friends. Is it near where your family and friends are going to want to be, or the people that you're going to want to be with you? Proximity to potential disasters or threats. You know, who wants to live right next to Whiteman Air Force Base? Why or why not? It's a target. We don't want to live next to targets. You know, we talked about, you know, in the last couple of weeks, the rail car disaster. Who wants to live right next to a railroad track? You know, I live in Polk County. There are 0 train tracks in Polk County. Not a one. To me, that's a benefit. You know, living next to a train track is a threat, in my opinion. You know, there are other things that you can think of that I wouldn't want my property next to. It becomes a threat. It could be anything from a nuclear power plant to a military base to a big manufacturing or chemical facility, those types of things. Utilities. Again, when purchasing a property, you might be looking for something that's totally off-grid, and so utilities don't matter to you whatsoever. If that's where you're going, great. I would love to be self-sufficient like that, but I'm not at that stage personally, so I have to consider utility access. You know, and all I need is electricity. I don't need water, sewer, all that type of thing, and I think that's great. I think hopefully, you know, most of your homesteads and most of your bug out locations should have their own water and septic source, and then you can do an alternate energy source like solar or something like that. But think about that. The neighbors.
Kind of hard to interview the neighbors.
Well, you know, when every property that I've purchased, I have made it a point to try to at least be familiar with the neighbors that are around. You know, are the neighbors friendly? Are the neighbors not friendly? Are the neighbors, you know, and you don't want to show your hand totally, but are they of a similar mindset or are they not? How could you determine that without revealing your cards?
How do you go about meeting them out in the buddies? What's work best for you?
Well, first thing I do when I'm considering a piece of property to purchase is I pull up on the GIS, you know, website, but the tax assessor's website for the most part. How you find that for your county? Google, I do Polk County, Missouri, GIS. I don't even know what GIS stands for, but that's Graphical Information System. But it is the maps that all the assessors in the area use And you can pull it up and you can find the owner's name and you can see their property lines and all that type of thing. So I start by figuring out who is around me, and then I went up and tried to meet them. You know, and again, in doing that, how do I know just by walking up if this person might be friendly or might not be friendly to who I am?
Did they shoot at you on the way?
Did you shoot at me on the way in?
I think the dogs are.
How big the dogs are, yeah, okay. The way they keep the property. If I walk up to a house and they've got a barn with livestock, and they've got a nicely kept garden, are they going to be maybe friendly to what I might have? And I'm not going to walk up and spill my beans, you know what I mean? I'm not going to regurgitate everything about me as soon as I meet them, but might they be more friendly? If it looks like something straight out of Cops, Meth Lab is what I'm thinking. Yeah, straight out of the Cops episode in a meth lab. Well, what am I thinking about that situation?
Every rural Missouri.
Yeah, you know, but you've got to look this out, you know, and the key thing is helping it make your decision as to whether to buy the property or not, but also in your planning. You know, is my neighbor going to be someone who I want to invite to my mutual assistance group? Or is my neighbor probably going to be one of the first ones to be on my, I would say this nicely, burial list?
Have a special bulletin with his name on it?
Yeah, you know, I hate to be blunt, but you got to be blunt, you know, when you consider the neighbors that you might have. You know, how close they are, how you could defend against them, or maybe they could help you defend if they're good neighbors. But neighbors is important. Emergency services, and I have, this is almost a pre-SHTF idea here, but because I've always said that, you know, I'd say earlier my demarcation line was when emergency services weren't coming. But as a volunteer firefighter now, the more rural you get, the less likely someone's going to get there to help you in a timely manner. In Polk County, we had a fire this week that burned a garage completely down to the ground. It had 3 cars in it, ammo, fuel, all kinds of things. And the department that was supposed to respond initially didn't get there for 35 minutes.
So you saved the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically saved the foundation, you know. And that's a joke, as volunteer firefighters are foundation savers. But medical-wise, you know, there are places in my Morrisville Fire Protection District that if volunteer firefighters, I don't know if y'all know this, we're at home. We're not at the station. You know, 2 o'clock in the morning when we get paged out, we're at home in bed. We have to get dressed, we have to respond to the station, and then we go out to the call. And so there are places in our Fire Protection District that just travel time is at least 20 minutes. So if you're having a heart attack, what is your survival rate there? Don't die. You know, if your house is burning down, we're going to get there to save the foundation and keep the field from catching on fire maybe. You know, you compromise something the further you get out. So keep that in mind. You still, if you're talking a bug in location where you're living day in, day out, if you get it so far in the boonies, your emergency services are going to be nil. And again, not talking after SHTF, because you are your own emergency services. But before SHTF, there's a big compromise there.
Where I worked in Camden County, on the ambulance, there were places in our service area that were an hour with lights and sirens.
Wow. So Carol's one of our paramedics, and so she said, if you didn't hear her, where she worked in Camden County, there were places that from the ambulance station were in a 1-hour drive if they had to go there. That's with lights and sirens. Because by the way, on these rural roads, lights and sirens don't help you go any faster. You know. Yeah. So anyway, that's something to consider. You know. Purchasing property, the last thing we'll talk about is the actual house itself. in my opinion, in a lot of cases, the house itself is one of the actual lower priority things. Why is that? Why might the house itself be one of the lower priority things? Now, it could be a really big plus or a really big minus, but why is it not necessarily super important? Sorry? What did I hear you say? You can change houses. You can build it, you can add on, you can change it, you can remodel it. The house is much more easily changed than the topography. The house is more easily changed than the proximity to populations. The house is more easily changed than the neighbors, unless you have a plan to get rid of them. Okay? And don't tell me if you do. Okay? The house can potentially be changed. Can it be a huge plus factor? Absolutely. If you've got a house that maybe the person before it has the prepper mindset and it's got some of the shelter, or one of the things I love the most about living in Southwest Missouri is most houses have a basement, which is a big plus. So if the house has a great basement, man, that's a huge plus. But these things sometimes can be changed. So does the house have a basement or some kind of a shelter? Man, that would be a great thing to have. As a matter of fact, when I was looking most recently, I did not look at any house that didn't have a basement. If it didn't have a basement, I wasn't interested in it. Okay? The size of the house, you know. Again, we go back to the very first question we asked about property discussions. And what was the very first question we asked when we talk about property? Who's it for? So how many people are you going to need to have at your place? So it's important. And again, you can always add on. That's not a problem. Type of construction. Are some types of construction for the house, i.e. what's it made of, better than others? Absolutely. What about Pensmore? Pensmore. What's Pensmore? Y'all not know what Pensmore is?
South Ozark.
Alan, what's Pensmore?
Oh, Pensmore, the castle.
Yeah, the castle by Busick State Park. That's why I call it Alan there. Okay, between here and Branson, along 65, the big, huge castle off to the side.
Right behind the old salvage yard.
Yeah, right behind the old salvage yard, you're right. But Pensmore, what's special about its construction? What's it made of?
Concrete.
A special kind of concrete that, by the way, the contractors messed up and did it wrong, so there was a huge lawsuit. They didn't put enough of this helix material. It's stuff that, these fibers that bind the concrete together somehow, but it was supposed to be an impenetrable type fortress kind of thing. But what it was made of was highly desirable. Okay? Kind of a thing. What's that? Kevlar, not quite, but close, you know, concrete version of it. But what it's made of, if you have a house that's just 2x4 construction with OSB and vinyl siding, is that as desirable as something that's maybe made of masonry block? Or a brick home that has brick on it. And again, none of these, bar Pensmore, is probably the absolute impenetrable fortress, but some are more desirable than others, so consider that. And again, everything can be remodeled and things can be added or done differently. The quality of the construction. There's a vast difference. I'm a home inspector is one of the things I do. There's a huge difference in the quality of construction of homes. And so if you can find a home that is made in a quality manner, that's going to be a big benefit. Then the last thing we'll talk about here is possibly one of the most important aspects of the property or the home you choose, and that is its defensibility. And if you invest in a property, you know, a home and a piece of property like this is typically the largest purchase we make in our entire lifetime. If you put a bunch of money into that, you also put a bunch of money into your preps, and you have food, and you have water, and you have all this stuff for when it all hits the fan and it's the end of the world as we know it, and then marauders come through and you're not able to defend your property. How good was that for you? It wasn't good at all. So, again, I think it's one of the most important aspects of this, and defensibility has a lot to do with some of the other factors. where it's located in respect to the population. Is it more rural? Is it not? What are your neighbors like? You know, topography, absolutely. All those things play into this defensibility. But what you may be stuck here is if you have a property, maybe where you're at right this minute is in the city, you know, or whatever, and you haven't got that ultimate bug out location yet. But defensibility is really important, and there are a lot of things you can do. We've talked about different defensibility things and making sure that you can at least reasonably defend what you have, because I think it's a very, very important factor for both your bug in location and your bug out location. So let's talk. We got just a couple of minutes left. We won't hit this a lot. We've already talked about it a little bit. Things I do not recommend, and this is personally. If any part of your plan is being a lone wolf, i.e., you're going to do it all by yourself, I think you're completely misguided, and that's my opinion. You know, gray man, lone wolf, I'm going to, you know, I'm survivalist and I'm going to live off the land. You know, I just don't think it's feasible. Someone mentioned earlier what happened in the Great Depression to wildlife. They were almost hunted to extinction. Well, imagine a scenario nowadays where, you know, there's no food on the grocery store shelves anywhere. Everybody that's got a deer rifle is going to go out there and just start shooting whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. And there's not going to be a lot of deer to eat, or rabbits, or squirrels, or anything else. Anything that moves is going to be killed, and it's going to be wasted, to be honest. You know, if people shoot a deer and they have no way of refrigeration, what's going to happen to that deer? They're going to eat what they can right then, and then it's going to rot. The other animals are going to get it overnight or whatever. You know, so I don't think the lone wolf is a good scenario. And just in general, the living off of the land, again, for those same reasons, it's just not practical. My idea that I had a long time ago that I would just go to the national forest and live off of the land, just totally unrealistic. Why? Well, we just talked about what's going to happen to the wildlife. But all the people from the cities, once they've ravaged the cities, are going to be heading out with the same idea. There's forest there, I can live in the forest or whatever, and you're going to have a lot of company out there. That company is going to be dangerous, they're going to be vicious, they're going to be violent, and they're not going to care about you. And desperate, absolutely. You may literally become their next meal if you try to take a nap. Because we all have to sleep at some point in time. They will not know how to use them, absolutely. Not how to use them safely. Absolutely. And honestly, in that scenario, they may not be caring about using it safely. You know, they don't care what they hit. They don't care. One of the rules is always know what's beyond your target. They don't care what's beyond their target. You know, so anyway, free book. And you will hope you want to write this down. There's a series out there called The Ever-Flowing Fountain. And it is a series of little small booklets, like pamphlet-type booklets. So they're like 15, 16 pages. And The Ever-Flowing Fountain. And they're really interesting books. They're excellent, excellent, all preparedness-minded type booklets. There's a whole series of them. And they have big warnings about do not copy, do not distribute, all this type of things. Contact the publisher for permission. And they don't ever say anywhere in the book who the publisher is or who wrote it. There's none of that information in there. It's really odd. But they are an excellent series of books. I've recommended them before. That Ever-Flowing Fountain book is great on water. It's all about water. The book they have, Surviving the First 72 Hours and Beyond, is another excellent, short, concise, to-the-point publication. The only place I've ever found them is various places will have them for free download. Okay, so I've downloaded them. This place, I found this afternoon, because I'm not sure where I actually got mine. I've had mine for several years, but I found this website that has this publication and the Ever-Flowing Fountain. There's actually, I think, 10 booklets in that series. But I recommend going there, free downloading that, and getting that information about the topic we've discussed tonight. So that is the end of that. We got about 10 minutes, which is just about perfect. I can take just a couple of minutes to answer questions. If you have questions, and then we'll get into our drawing and we'll get you out of here on time. Dan?
Something I did in talking about property here and looking at property, as I started this search, I thought I did a nationwide kind of narrowed down areas, but what I also did is I wrote out all the things I was looking at for a piece of property. I then said, I think 4 or 5, that's my primary things I want. So I've written primary, secondary, tertiary. So I want to make sure I hit my primary, and you don't want a handful, you want 3 or 4, maybe 5 of the very most primary items. You get too large of a list, you're going to go crazy, or you're going to need several $1 million to find it. So I did that. So here were the primary items. Then you have your secondary items and your third. So as you go through and you look at your different properties, you start looking at those things. And that's part of what I did. That was some of the things I did. I had a spreadsheet with all this stuff on, and as I find a piece of property online, I go through and say, look at it. Which county is it in? What's here? What's this? What am I seeing on this?
Building codes are an important issue.
Yeah. So I created a spreadsheet as I went through and looked at different properties, and I did this in Florida. So when I came out here for a month, I had properties in mind to start looking at. And then working with my realtor, we found a few too. So, but that's what you got to approach this. You got to be very methodical and logical about it. You got to take the emotion. If you walk in, you see a house, like go in a car shop, you see a beautiful car, you say, I gotta have this Corvette. You don't need a Corvette. But you gotta take that emotion aside. Look at it logically if you're looking for property and what you can do. I want a property basically already have an existing home. I know I wanted to move out here and continue working. I didn't want to take the time to go build a home or rebuild one. So that was something that was important to me. I had certain property size. Water was a key item. I wanted to make sure there was a source of water, either be a well, ability to have a well, or a natural spring. So you've got to look at these things. You've got to have, what are my primary items? You start there, then you look at the other factors. I just want to put I went through this, like I said, within the last 2 years, and it wasn't something I just did, at that point. I had been thinking about this for several years prior. Kind of coming up with that list and change all the time. And one other factor was within 30 minutes of the hospital.
Yep.
I'm not getting any younger. And if I do something stupid out there, good times. I want to be able to get to the hospital. So.
Good. Great information. Thank you, Dan. Yes.
I'm Jessica. I've been doing a little bit of side research and studying, and on YouTube is really informative. And I've been watching some urban survival. If you just type in a search bar, urban survival. Just a couple days ago, we watched on how to actually appropriately, critically think on how to actually pack a bug out bag. Things, just something small thought I'd throw out there.
Yeah. Good. Any other thoughts or comments, Dwayne?
Keep in mind there were 2 substations tried to be attacked this last couple of weeks. They're talking about terrorist things, but that hits close to home. Everybody's got a substation close by. They forget to say how many 55,000 we have, and they're not all protected at all.
Lots of threats.
Terrorists can happen anytime.
Yes.
We have a problem with the rural areas. Some trailer parks or trailer houses and drug. You talk to the realtor and they say, oh yeah, we've got a big meth problem here. How do you, I don't think you can get a place where there's not around, but how can you defend it?
It is an absolutely problem of epidemic proportions. I mean, as a rural volunteer firefighter, we go to these places all the time, and they're pretty much everywhere. And so you're lucky, again, as much land as you can as a buffer is potential.
Those people are looking for money.
Yeah. But then you're just gonna have to do like Dan did and then look at this piece of property and then look at the ones around it. Look at this one. You will find one. It's possible to find isolated ones that don't have bad neighbors. But what you may end up having to do is just have a good plan for dealing with the neighbors. It may be a fence. It may be, you know, I set up motion detectors to determine if anybody's coming in that direction on the property, and alarm systems and those types of things. It may just be a plan of dealing with the neighbors. You know, I don't know that I have a definitive answer because they're everywhere. Yeah, and it's getting worse, and I don't think it's going to get better.